in our industry. Fourth point is there a level playing field for private and public sector? It's critical because public monopolies can be worse than the private monopolies if poorly performing because they are protected. Competitiveness has to be there to drive performance. Okay, internal governance of firm is necessary but not sufficient for SOE performance that have to face host of external adversities and demands, the local pressures that SOEs face. And finally, strengthening of transparency and accountability frameworks with special provisions for safeguarding state assets and preserving and enhancing their marketability and valuation is important. I'm going to skip the details of the code because all of you are so familiar with this stuff that I will not try to spend more time. Suffice to say that I think minimum 4 provisions should be respected. Appointment of CEOs and board of directors process and quality has to be improved. We have to clarify the roles and responsibility of the board and CEOs. We have to separate the role of the board and CEO, and we have to ensure that we form the right board committees which are independently governed so that the company is under the radar. I'm going to skip these slides because I'm sure these will be made available by ICAP for your use, but these are more details, and I think you as accountants or even industry specialists know this more than I as to how to value these. I see these more mechanical. I'm not undermining them. I think they are very important. They are not necessarily respected, but these are things you know more than anybody else. So, what are my views on Pakistan SOE policy framework? I think we lack a coherent and consistent policy framework. Each sector ministry manages, runs, and operates companies on an ad hoc basis. I am a minister of XYZ background. I have my own experience. Whether I'm skilled in running a company or not, I know what is best to do. So I'm heading a sector ministry. I will decide for you what to do. That's not how really professionalization comes in. Reportedly from the press and the evidence that I have read, the literature that I've researched, there is mismanagement of SOEs by inexperienced people, there's vested interest, there's interference, there's misuse of funds, which has grown. Companies report surplus workforce and skill deficiencies, and here we come and retroactively absorb past laid off workers who had already enjoyed the privileges of the voluntary retirement scheme benefits. Double-edged hit to the exchequer. Patronage and loyalty rather than performance of a company is being rewarded. There's no uniform policy for remuneration and wages of SOE sector, nor is it linked to productivity. In the private sector, of course, the private sector is watching as to what they are paying and what they are not paying. And I have to say, in the past few weeks, I have visited a lot of private companies, and I know how much it aches them as to what they are paying and whether there's productivity or returns coming about from paying a particular individual. We need to develop a coherent and consistent policy framework and apply uniformly across. Exceptions have to go through a particular scrutiny. We need to develop a central management data and information system which could offer a comprehensive perspective on operational and financial performance. I go to the company website, I don't know what I'm looking at. Ownership and oversight is quite dispersed and fragmented, being with sector ministries who do not talk to each other often, and transparency. There is no transparent policy framework or reporting. Quality of oversight varies as ministries also lack capacities and understanding of the principles of governing SOEs, And we had this Islamabad session where I think we did try to invite public sector to come and come up to date with what is required. Corporate governance code, the draft of public sector companies regulations are a first step, I have said, and have to be adopted clearly. I think there is this issue of some companies are going to be, that are listed will be okay because they are going to have the oversight of the SCCP, but who's going to oversee the SOEs? And we have to add to code elucidations to offer more deeper guidance on SOEs so that SOEs know what they are accountable for. They need to have higher standards of accountability, which is it's defined in the code, but we need to spell it out a little more. And state ownership does not automatically guarantee ministerial or any other entities misplaced control, so we have to tell the ministries and public sector as to what their behavioral patterns would be. Fixing, and I'm re-emphasizing this, that fixing internal governance is necessary but not sufficient, but now I'm presenting a different context to you in this slide. This is really that countries have moved from decentralized oversight of the companies to centralized model of ownership, and also countries have tried to infuse more competitive neutrality and contestability of markets in which SOEs operate, to use the power of competition to introduce better results. And the policies have been developed, their SOEs have been given a more legal structure because here some companies are operating as departmental undertakings. There's also a policy for public service obligation, and the role of the regulators has been spelled out more clearly so that they can also develop their capacities to be able to oversee the SOEs. Also in certain countries, we are developing a watchdog or offering tools such as corporate scorecard for ensuring transparency and compliance with the code. Just few minutes on centralized because I do know namaz ka time ho raha hai, so you have to also speak, so I'll run very fast. We have time, okay. So I do want to take few minutes on the centralized ownership model because this is a debate when I came to Pakistan, some people talked to me about. So I revisited, I worked on these things in some countries, but I tried to be current on these slides. There was a survey of OECD and the study of the World Bank, which has categorically established now that there is a trend moving from decentralized ownership. By decentralized, I mean, of course, the ownership is with Ministry of Finances of every country of the state assets. But by decentralized, I mean the sector ministries being in charge of the SOE. If I am dealing with power, as a power minister, or the ministry will be in charge. That model is history today, at least in good governance environments. So countries are moving towards centralized ownership model. Centralization has been adopted both in developed and developing countries. Means adopting a holding company structure, legalizing it, defining the rules of game for holding company, ensuring that the holding companies have independent private sector board members, and transferring the SOE assets and its oversight under one roof structure. That's the word that has been used in the OECD literature. So what is the rationale for this umbrella framework? It stems from the need for adoption of consistent approach to promote SOE strategic alignment and synergy creation. And you will see what I mean by strategy alignment and synergy creation in a little while. Allow SOEs of different sectors to operate under one umbrella to manage strategy, operations, and financial holding. Achieve economies of scale and scope to pool resources, lower risk, and provide access